Now, how many of you, if I said, could you just like come and hold this glass here for a moment, would be like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Yeah, no problem. What if I said, well, you come here and hold this out like this for 2 minutes? I'm starting to get some, yeah? All right, Allison's like, okay, she's up for it for 2 minutes. What if I said, can you come and hold this glass out here like this for 10 minutes?
It's like the gym.
It's like the gym, okay. But I think most of you are like, that might get heavy after a while, right? And you certainly, I'm guessing even if you were going to do 10 minutes, you wouldn't be up for like an hour. No. Because light things become less light over time, right? It's still very thirst quenching. In a study by Dr. Lauren Toussaint, we're pretending I know how to say his name, right? And his colleagues found that people who had greater levels of accumulated lifetime stress exhibited worse mental health outcomes. Not too big a surprise, right? But, here comes the good part. Among the subset of volunteers in the study who scored high on measures of forgiveness, high lifetime stress didn't predict poor mental health. And a quote from Dr. Toussaint, he says, "We thought forgiveness would knock something off the relationship between stress and psychological distress, but we didn't expect it to zero it out." What? And in case you didn't know how bad stress can be, the National Institute of Health says that over time, continued strain on your body from routine stress may contribute to serious health problems such as heart disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, and other illnesses, as well as mental disorders like depression or anxiety. So, but we have the study that says that people who do higher measures of forgiveness, those lifetime stress things, totally wiped out. Whoa. Just go home and think about that. We can go have potluck now. No. It's like holding the glass, right? We can hold on to it for a moment, and if we say, okay, now we're done with it, we put it off to the side, and then it's not a big deal. But if we hold on to it for a long time, we're going to get an arm workout, and eventually we're not going to be able to hold on to it. And one of my own experiences about when we have stuff, we all have stuff, right? We have past injustices and stuff, and we try to have, even things we thought maybe we let go of, something new will happen that will be kind of similar, and we'll get really riled up, and it won't be about what just happened. It'll be about the past thing, right? And then they kind of build on each other and stick on each other and go and get bigger. So that's the problem. If we can forgive and really forgive, deep level forgive, then we won't have those build-up experiences which cause high levels of stress and distress, and might cause us to act in ways that are not in our highest Christ self. At least that's happened to me. And so I call this talk 70 times 7, which is a reference to a Bible quote that you probably have heard before, but here goes. Peter came to Jesus and said, this is in Matthew, if another member of the church sins or sin means make a mistake, cause harm to me. If another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? And Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you, 7 times 70, or 70 times 7. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean 490 times. It means as many times as it takes to get to completion, because 7 is a number that means in the Bible completion. How many days did it take in Genesis to create the world? 7, right? So that's like the number that it takes to do things. So we forgive as many times as it takes for us to get to completion, which can be a lot sometimes, depending on how difficult something is. Because what we realize is forgiving doesn't mean that we don't hold people accountable for their actions, or that if someone has done an atrocity that they don't need to, have jail time or whatever it is that's required for their thing. But that doesn't mean that if we continue to hold on to it, it's us doing this. Us forgiving the situation just lets us do this. So there's lots of different methods for forgiveness. Lots and lots and lots and lots. I'm just going to give you one of them. Because if you really want to know, there's lots and lots of resources out there. And you all are smart enough to figure those things out. I know you are. But here's 4 steps that I like. The first step is uncovering one's negative feelings about the offense. Sometimes we might not even realize that something that's happened is bugging us. Has that ever happened to you? And then something else happens and you just like, boom, trigger, right? Ooh, okay, so there's some negative feelings here. Something here has triggered me and made me feel I'm not in control, or I don't know what's going on, or I don't trust this person, or I don't trust the situation. Something is not right here. So when we say, okay, I have some feelings. What are my feelings? What's going on here? And then the next step is deciding to forgive. Am I willing to forgive? Because sometimes it can feel very self-vindicating to be like, no, they were a jerk, and I'm going to stay mad at them because they were a jerk, and I am righteously upset. But I am righteously upset, and I am vindicated. How's that working for you?
It's not affecting me at all.
It's not affecting you at all? No?
Just you.
Yeah, just me. So we got to decide to forgive. And sometimes it takes a couple steps to get there. So we might be, before we get to actually saying, okay, I'm really ready to completely let this go, we might have another step of, I'm willing to be ready to let this go. Or we might be, I'm willing to be willing to let this go and release this and forgive. And then once we finally get there, remember we have to do it as many times as it takes. 70 times 7. I would hope that you would lose track of counting before you got to 70 times 7. Like at some point you would be like, okay, I'm just ready to be done with this. I would hope. And then, so that's only 2 steps though, right? So there's more. So just saying we want to is good. So we figured out that we have feelings, and we decided we want to forgive. And then the next step is working towards understanding the offending person. So that can be the part, because see, that's where when we're righteous, we're like, I'm righteous in being upset. If we work towards understanding them, then maybe we could understand where they're coming from or why they made the choice they made. See, that makes it harder to be mad at them, right? Yeah. And because the fourth step is discovering empathy and compassion for them. So those two steps kind of go together. First, we have understanding. Oh, well, I understand why they made that choice, even if I disagree or it ended up hurting me, that was coming from their own situation or whatever. I can have empathy and understanding for that. And that's where we really get to have the full release of the situation, because when we can have compassion for where they were when they did that, whew, it's just harder to be mad, you know, or upset or frustrated or whatever it is. So, I love this. I wrote example. And when I was writing this last night, I was like, oh, you won't forget what your example is. Totally did. So there's a really great example. Fill it in here. Nope. Okay. Nice. So
You've already forgiven, so.
I've already, I'm totally over it. So I'm just, yeah. Obviously, this was not the right venue for that story, apparently. So, so we've talked so far about forgiveness of the other, the person who's wronged us in some way, which is one thing. But there's also self-forgiveness. Forgiveness of the things that maybe you all don't do this, but sometimes I'll remember some stupid thing that I did 20 years ago, and it won't even be a big thing. It'll just be something I said that was unkind, or just some little injustice or whatever that I did all these years ago, and it will still pop up in my mind, and I will think about that, and I'm like, why? Obviously, I can't. I don't even know how to find the person that was. Anyway, so okay, so I worked through the same process for myself. Why, having empathy for myself and understanding, why did I do that? Why did I do that? Okay, I can understand I was coming from a place of fear, or I was coming from a place of not wisdom, or, whatever. So when we forgive the person in the mirror, it really makes a difference. It's sometimes more hard than forgiving someone else, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
Gotta let it go, kids. Gotta let it go. And so, we've been doing this season of nonviolence, and that's 64 tools to create more peace in your life, which of course makes more peace in the world, right? So they have them back to back: forgiveness and then amends. Isn't that nice? It's like two sides of the same thing. So amends is when I realize that I screwed up and I want to fix it, or at least build a bridge, because you can't fix it, but you can build a bridge, right? It's not about begging someone to forgive you. It's about saying, I goofed up, and I'm going to own it. And so there's also many different strategies for how you can make amends. If you want to know more, visit your local self-help section or go to the internet. There's lots of ways. But I got 4 of those too. So the first step in this particular method is determine the scope. How big was the, it goes from spilling your coffee, which is pretty low scope, hopefully, to, fill in the blank injustice. I agree, we can go way over there, right? So determine the scope of what you have, your offense. Offer a sincere, carefully worded apology. Not about excuses or advocating blame. We've seen plenty of those kind of apology excuses. Maybe in the news you've seen some apology excuses. Just apologize. Don't excuse. I made a mistake. I'm really sorry that happened. Really. And then you want to offer ways to strengthen the relationship or offer restitution. If you spilled someone's coffee, buy them a new one. That's an easy one. It can be a lot harder, of course, if it's a bigger deal. And it can be a lot more powerful. And not just, how can I fix this? Because, some things you can't fix. But how can I build a bridge between my heart and yours? That's what we're looking for. More than fixing. But how can I come into a place of trust and relationship? And you have to allow that the other person might not be interested. Or they may not be interested in doing it on your timeline. And that's okay, because that's theirs to do. Your job is to offer the apology with an open heart. And then the fourth step, of course, is to try not to do it again, to avoid making the same mistake. Because that's how we make ourselves better, right? Is hopefully learning from our goof ups and not doing them again. It's not always that easy, but that's the goal. And sometimes we offer this, we recognize that we made a mistake to ourselves as well. And so both of these, forgiveness is about our own inner peace. Amends is also, in a way, about our own inner peace, because if we know we've made a goof up and we haven't at least tried to make a connection about it, we're probably going to have some turmoil about it, right? And what's important is that we realize that sometimes, especially with forgiveness is an inner job and has nothing to do with the person who doesn't have anything to do with anybody else, right? With amends, you want to try to make a connection, but sometimes that's not possible. Maybe the person has passed on. Maybe the relationship is so unhealthy or whatever that is not possible or wise. You can still work through the process of, maybe you write a letter and you don't mail it. You just write the letter so that you can let those feelings go and make that process happen. Because you can't always. The person's not always around. But we got to find ways to stop doing this. Because that's what holds us back from our joy. That's what holds us back from being the best example of love in the world that we want to be. It's what holds us back from being at peace. I don't know about you, but sometimes you're laying there in bed and you're like, you think about that stupid thing that you did, and you're like, what? Why? Why is that there? And I said, okay, well, I guess that's something I can put on my list of things to work on letting go of, isn't it? How many times? How many times? Which really means as long as it takes. It seems like that comes back up again and again, doesn't it? That whole as long as it takes thing. It's like that's what the spiritual process is about or something, isn't it? Man, love those consistent things. So, I invite you to engage in a deeper process of forgiveness, engage in a deeper process of amends. The science tells us that it is the best thing we can do for ourselves to get out of stress. Which, of course, if we're out of stress, we have more peace, right? It's not in the study, but that seems like an obvious correlation. So, for this season of nonviolence, and for the rest of your life, I hope, when you're thinking about how that person done you wrong and how you're going to be mad at them for the end time, remember this, and don't.